gem and buy me another. Those ruby slippers will be perfect on my feet. Want me to listen? Those earrings might be neat. I dream of a joy when my collection is complete. Diamonds help me to dream. Rubies help me remember.
Welcome to What a Gem. This is the podcast about the world of jewelry and the stories behind it. And today I'm talking to Michele, a wonderful designer of jewelry. I have a necklace and earrings from her. I saw her at the South Lake, Texas art festival, and I walked into the booth and I said, "Landscapes in a jewelry. This is amazing." And then I found so many pieces that I loved. And so I really wanted to talk to Michele and learn more about what she's doing. So Michele, tell us about your company, and I have lots of questions.
So, I guess I'll just start with the name because the name Sidhe is actually pronounced she, and it was Gaelic for fairies. I used to really be into fairies, and I love nature, so it was kind of the combination of the outdoors with creating. And in Celtic mythology, they would have done things like have been with the mortals and help them help them learn how to make metals, smithing, and things like that. So it was a fun name, and I thought she designs, she, but nobody ever knows how to pronounce it. So I'm not so sure that worked, but it is a good story. So
Well, I will say
yeah.
I was in a vintage store and I was wearing your necklace, and the lady asked me about it, and she says, "Well, who made it?" And I said, "Well, she designs." And I pulled up the your website so that she could see the link, and she's like, "Oh, it's Gaelic." So there are people out there that know
do
what you're
know.
doing.
And I've got the Irish Scottish in me, and lived in Dublin for a year when I was younger. So yeah, lots of connections to the name. It's
And
good.
it comes through in the designs as well that you have, because there's a lot of whimsical designs in your jewelry line, and like you say, a lot of nature.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I truly love on your website is you have various trees, and they mean different things or different symbols. And
Yeah.
can you just describe a few of those? What is the symbolism beside the designs?
I'll start with the story of that. So when I moved to Colorado, I was originally going to be, I was a Montessori art specialist in Atlanta, and I wanted to move here and do the same thing. And it was the recession, and I couldn't get the job because they couldn't afford to bring on another position. My mom had made the suggestion that why don't you try jewelry, Michele? Everybody compliments my jewelry. And so I began this crazy adventure of making jewelry. And I had cut out, when I moved here, it was like so bizarre to me that you could get these. I remember there was a day it was 90-mile-an-hour winds, and it was sunny outside. So coming from Florida and Atlanta, usually when you had those high winds, it meant there were hurricanes. And here you could be with the sun and this crazy wind at the same time. And I found that to be really sort of philosophical in a way, that you could be really present and joyful and go through things that are difficult and hard all at once. And so this blowing tree, I sawed out this tree that was blowing in the wind. And at the time I had ended a relationships. I had started a new one, had changed careers, had moved to a different state. I did all of these things at once. And so this tree was very symbolic to me. And I wanted it to represent that idea that you could be grounded, and at the same time, you could be flexible, and you were strong and rooted, and that you could endure things that were difficult, that it was possible. I wanted to be like that tree.
Bend
So
and not
that sort of,
break.
yeah, it sort of started the whole thing of, can I bring out in my jewelry what I see in nature that helps me? And so it sort of grew from there, to, I've got my summer tree, which all the leaves are out, and, it's joyful. You're just present with the world. um, to one winter, I remember just seeing, it was a really long winter, and then seeing the little sprouts come up. And it was just like you were ready for a new experience and a uh, new ability to start fresh. And then there was, and I'll give one more, because there's a dragonfly. I had originally started off with the dragonfly as my logo. And when I was teaching, we lost a little girl who was 5 years old. And it was hard for everybody at school. She died of the flu. And anyways, so the minister had given this really beautiful sermon on the dragonfly, and it was about all the little nymphs under the water, and how they were all like, I want to go to this, that you all leave, and everybody leaves, and nobody comes back and tells us what's going on once you leave. And so this one little guy is, I'm gonna tell everybody what's going on, once it's my time. So it came to be his time, and he exited the underworld of water, and he was above the water, and his body, all of a sudden he had these wings, and he could fly, and there are rivers and trees, and he could feel wind and sun, and he was so excited and couldn't wait to go back and tell his friends. And so when he dove down into the water, he had this body that didn't swim anymore. It bounced off the water, and he kept trying and trying, and he couldn't go back to tell his friends how beautiful. And it was such a touching story, of transformation and new beginnings. So that was the symbol of the dragonfly.
That is lovely. And there is that element of you can think you go back, but you don't go back to the same thing. I mean,
That's right.
that can carry on in so
Anything.
many elements of life. Yes.
Exactly. Right now, we'll have this talk, and it'll be gone, and then we don't go back again.
I have dragonflies at my pond, out my window. I'm never going to look at those dragonflies the same again. Yeah,
Right.
that's just it, and it is touching to see those nature elements within jewelry. And you also have some great fun people. You have hikers, and I love the little earrings that are hikers. You have a little camper.
Yeah.
So is that part of that Colorado influence because it's such an outdoor element, or what drove that into your jewelry?
I think I wouldn't say it was just Colorado. As a child, I was the little girl that was digging in the dirt, and it was a punishment to be put inside. And so the outdoors have always been really important. My family didn't spend money on things. They spent money on traveling and going places and doing things. And most of it was the outdoors. We would go to national and state parks around the country, and, we would be gone for weeks at a time. And then I've also have been very active in rock climbing since I lived in Atlanta. And even did a little bit when I lived in Dublin. So, yeah, I think the activities in general, I deeply connect with, but I also being here in Colorado, I will admit it's everywhere, and everybody loves, being outdoors. So I relate with a lot of people here for sure.
That's excellent. Um, so I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the technique that you have, because you have something that I had not seen before, which is reversible jewelry. And because like my earrings that I bought, they're light on one side, I call them the day side, and then there's like a dark side on the back, which I call my night side. I don't know how you
That's
describe
exactly right.
them. Um, but I'd like you to talk about the challenges of making jewelry that has to look good on both sides, and the technique that it takes to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of forethinking, and how something is going to look from one side to the other, particularly when I use a stone. So a lot of times I'll use a stone on one side and then have an image on the other side. And that can be challenging if the stone has different colors. And I have definitely gone through some metal and had to recycle it because I put it on the wrong side. So it takes, and now I'm much more careful. There's a lot of tracing paper involved so that I can see, I can trace and see what's going to be on the back. And so when I'm ready to saw for the back side, then I can kind of flip it with the tracing paper. Yeah.
Now, what is the technique that you use that creates the pierce through the metal, the cutout?
Yeah.
What is that called?
So that's actually called piercing.
Okay.
It's pierce work, and you drill a hole, a very tiny little hole, and there's a saw that looks a lot like a woodworker's coping saw, only it's made for jewelers, and it's a very fine blade, and they come in all different sizes, from very, very thin to very thick, and depending on what your uses are and the thickness of your metal. I tend to use very, very thin blades because I cut out lots of little teeny tiny, as you know, little tiny animals, little tiny people. It's a slow process. I often get asked if it's a laser cut. And I'm always there with my little saw saying, no, it's all done by hand.
I did that.
Everybody does. It's a common question. Yeah.
And the materials that you use, what do you like to work with, and what types of materials do you not like to work with?
So I love metals. I really love metals. When I first started, I did a lot of work with stones, and I still really love stones too. So I've been trying to incorporate both of them. But the metals, I do a variety. I started off with just silver when I was first doing this, and then eventually really liked the idea of incorporating color. And you can get a variety of colors in base metals. So you have copper and bronze and brass, and believe it or not, bronzes have different hues and colors within them. You can buy different types of bronzes. So that was really exciting. And then I came across kambu, which is an ancient Korean technique where you take 24 karat gold foil. So it's very thick. It's not like gold leaf. You can actually put it between tracing paper, and I draw what I want to cut out, and I can cut with scissors. And then using heat, like between 700 and 900 degrees, and pressure, it can bond to a fine silver surface. So I get this really brilliant 24 karat gold color on the pieces. Yeah.
So that gives you a lot of flexibility if you've got different colors, but there's also, like, how do you make on like the earrings that I have, the day and the night? What makes it light on one side and dark on the other?
So I use a patina, and it's a stinky patina called liver of sulfur. It's basically in the air. The liver of sulfur is a particularly moist air, or if you're near some hot springs. Don't ever go into hot springs with your silver jewelry if it's highly sulfuric, because you will end up with black jewelry, all black jewelry. So, yeah, the whole house smells a little bit like rotten eggs when I'm doing it, but it creates a very beautiful black color. And I do a process of dipping, and then I brass brush it in between the dippings. Actually, Dan does a lot of that work. I have a partner in crime in all of this, and he is amazing. And he does a lot of the work like that, so I can do the finer, sawing and soldering and stuff like that.
Now, this partner is your husband, is that right?
It is. It is.
I have also spent a career working with my husband, so that's
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that. But you mentioned when we had a call previously that he's a good partner in lots of ways. How do you guys? You just described one kind of difference of work, but how do you guys work together? What types of things do you delegate to him?
I loved our conversation because it was just such a earlier, because Dan is my math guy. I'm never had a great math skill set. And so he's the one that takes care of our finances. He's the one that takes care of all of the technological, website issues and things like that. Thankfully, because when I first started this, I did not have him with me. The first 3 years or 2 or 3 years, he was still doing carpentry and had not joined me in doing this as a business. And so I was doing all of my own books, and it was horrific. It would take me all day what would take him 2 hours,
Yes.
So, and then he does all of our our finish work. And he, even during the process of making things, I have a muscle that's paralyzed. That's why I'm looking at you sideways. It happened when I was 29. And so I can very easily get double vision. And I think my depth perception is a little off sometimes. And if I need to have something centered before I solder it, he comes over and double checks, makes sure it's in the center.
That's a good partnership there.
I know, it's perfect, because he doesn't consider himself to be creative, which I think is kind of silly, because I do think he's creative. It's just a different way. But yeah, our skill sets are very, very matching in that way. It makes for a good, easy partnership, because we have our own. We don't bump heads.
Yeah, to each their own, but they complement each other. Yes, that's the best kind of partnerships, I think. Now, I met him as well at in South Lake. You do quite a few art festival type works, so that requires travel.
Yes.
South Lake's a juried show, so can you explain what that means? What does it mean to be able to get into a juried show?
That's a great question, because I think there are a lot of people who don't understand when they go to some art festivals that the effort it takes to get into some of these festivals. They think like, oh, you just pay for a booth and then you get in again and again, but it's not how it works. So you have usually anywhere between 3 and 5 photographs that you submit, and I use a professional photographer. I'll give her a little shout out, but Cole Roger is phenomenal, and I love her. I love working with her. And then I have somebody else here in Colorado who also does some festivals here. He only does one now, I think. So you have to have a booth photograph as well, because sometimes it's not just the photographs. It might come down to a couple of jewelers they have to make a choice of, and it could be the booth picture that makes the difference in getting in to a festival,
because it's all about
it's
setting the bar. What
the
the organizers are trying to set the bar for the level of art that is
Absolutely.
in that.
Yes. And some of these festivals can be extremely hard to get into. I mean, I have the Winter Park, Florida Art Festival is one of the top in the nation, and it was my hometown. It's where I went. I did all of my my elementary and high school, and I give huge praises to that art program and my art teacher and my jewelry teacher there. Um, but that show took me 13 or 14, however long it was to get into. I applied every year. Dan was like, you
Wow.
should just stop applying, Michelle. We're just giving them money every year. But I was determined because it was my hometown. And last year we finally got in. So yeah. And
Fantastic.
I got a picture of me and my art teacher there.
That's really special. So tell me about your art teacher and the influence for that creativity.
So I was definitely that kid that all I wanted to do was live in the art room. And I even took summer school classes so that I could have more art classes in my senior year. And I think I had 3 or 4 art classes in my senior year. And then my wonderful art teacher, I think there were just times when I just want to go to the art room and I would skip some class and she'd just look at me and go sit in the corner as long as you're not bothering anybody and do your art. You know? And it was really the support there that she had for those of us that were a little unique. We weren't the typical. It was really important for me during that time of my life when I was a little more insecure in other areas. And to have this area where it was natural, it came natural for me. And I felt at home with, to have that kind of support. And I had a jewelry teacher as well. That was really phenomenal. Ramona Pelly, and she had told me about going to Florida State and if you want to do jewelry in school, you should go to Florida State because William Harper is there. And so ultimately I did end up deciding to go to Florida State, and I was doing my my whatever you call them, your bachelor stuff
Bachelor's.
that you have to do, all of your English and whatever. And I was doing all of that. And during the first year of college, he went blind and the whole department shut down.
Oh no.
So I did not do jewelry in college. I still applied for the Bachelor of Fine Arts program and I got in, and it was phenomenal. And I had one of the best mentors of my life, and I would never ever take it back. Ed Love meant a lot to me, and I had a lot of really good art teachers along the way.
That's shout out to teachers. Yes.
I feel like that journey was to have teachers that gave that kind of support where you really looked at yourself. I think art has a lot to do with exploring you and the world, and they were those people for me that helped me look inward.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I
Yeah.
still remember my high school art teacher was the coolest teacher. She was just, jammed to her own music that,
Yeah.
the other people kind of turned their nose at, and they gave her a room down the hallway away from everybody else so she could turn up her music. And yeah, she was very cool, very chill,
That's so great.
and very inspiring. And so you didn't have the jewelry department there at school, but how did you learn your techniques? Was some of that taught in school, or did you learn it on your
No.
own?
Yeah, so I when I left Florida State, I had my little stint in Dublin, and then I came back and I started I was a gymnastics teacher for many, many years from the time I was 14. And then I knew I didn't want to teach gymnastics for the rest of my life. And um, with an art degree, it's kind of interesting. It gets a little interesting. Like, what am I going to do with my life? And I ended up at this Montessori school. And your question again, I got sidetracked again
And
in my brain.
how did you learn the techniques for jewelry if it wasn't from
Right.
without
So
formal education?
yes. So when I started, I was at the Montessori school, I really wanted something for myself, that I could do on the side. And I actually did um the book. I was doing the book, The Artist's Way. And if you're familiar with Julian Cameron's book, and it
Yes.
was fabulous. And what got me back into jewelry was doing The Artist's Way.
Interesting.
And it was kind of like one of my little artist date things was to take a jewelry class. And then I stayed in this jewelry class for 10 years. It was just my thing that I did on my own. And I learned from Helen Blythehart, I will give kudos to as well. She was another phenomenal teacher who had a soldering technique that I stopped melting bezels and stopped melting things in general with her technique. And now I teach her technique to other people. So that's who I did a lot of my learning from as a hobby.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask if, because you have a teaching background, do you teach now, formally or informally?
I do teach, and I love teaching. I really have fun teaching. I like people, and uh, I like it, especially when people have a lot of curiosity and they're willing to be open and try new things. Because sometimes when I teach, I don't teach in the bounds. It's okay if you go out of the bounds. And I am okay with if you've learned from others and you want to bring that into something I'm teaching, great. So yeah. So
So that's wonderful because the fact that you've had great teachers and paying
yeah,
it forward for others as well is quite a
yeah,
blessing. Yeah.
yeah. I know. And I, even when I was teaching at the Montessori school, it's very, very rewarding. It's very rewarding, to be able to help people in a way where um, they think they can't do something, and then you offer that space for them to be able to do something with their own hands. That's creative. I think it's great.
So if you're designing, you're making jewelry, you're on the road selling jewelry, and then teaching, and how do you divide up that time? Like, is there
Oh my
anything?
gosh.
It never enough time in the day, right?
Yeah, and then try to fit my personal like outdoor time because that's so important to me as well. Um, I it's interesting you ask that because I often think to myself, how 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 can I fit all of this in?
Yes.
Often it's a constant struggle of, the balance of it all. Um, and a lot of it, as I've aged, I've learned I'm not as useful if I don't take the time and the space, for myself.
Yes.
I find that the more stressed I am, the slower I work, the less of a flow I have. When you're in, I'm sure if you've done any art and you're in that flow of creating something, that space is really beautiful.
Yes.
And it does, if you're stressed out all the time, it can feel very uh that it's harder to get to that place.
Yes.
So for me, taking personal time weirdly helps um with the rest of it. And then I do struggle because I'm definitely on the ADD spectrum and always have been. I know my mother, she's so funny. At one point she'd found a book in my 30s, I think it was, and it was something about right brain children living in a left brain world and something about ADD. And she said, Michelle, you've got to read this book. It's you. And I think it's, and I think for me, I'm not severe, but I learned how to use it to my advantage, if you know what I mean. But I do struggle with organization, and I struggle with, taking on things, starting and not finishing. And then I have to come back and finish this and being overwhelmed. And,
it's hard when you have conflicting priorities, because they can be priorities. It's a matter of just shifting them around, and both the entrepreneurial side and creative side. It's a juggle.
Yeah,
I can relate.
Yeah. I do think, though, that having deadlines for me, I know when we were trying to make a time for this, I realized if I don't set a time aside, it's just going to keep getting put off. I know myself well enough to know I have to have it on the calendar, or it does. Anything that I do in my life, it's got to get put into a calendar so that I can work towards that.
And I think people forget that creativity it can't always just be squeezed into, oh, well, you can just sketch something off, or you can just write something, while you're in line at the grocery store. Yes, I can sometimes write something while I'm in the line at the grocery store, but that's not the operation of how it works.
No.
So creativity does take a block of time. So do you have a season that is more your design time, or creation time that's between travels, or is it really spread out throughout the year?
Yeah, I think it is pretty spread out throughout the year. I do find that the spring and fall times can be a little more inspirational for me from a creative standpoint. Yeah. It kind of ebbs and flows. I think I'm in ebbs and flows more than anything.
I am too.
It could be anything from an experience that I had that really motivated me to sit down, or it could just be, really, sometimes it can even just be complete sadness or complete joy. I mean, it could be an emotional state that sort of, if I sit with nature, and then I start making those connections, that whatever emotional thing I'm going through, whether it's, like I said, joy, happiness, sad, mad,
it impacts
any of those states. If I take the time to sit with it, and especially when it's in nature, because a lot of times I can see myself in nature, it sort of brings me back, and then I can find the creativity within that process.
So do you have something new or something specific that you're excited about that you're working on now?
Well, it's funny, actually. I finished a couple of pieces that I really had fun with, and now I am weirdly thinking lots about, I have a close girlfriend of mine who's getting married, and I don't normally do customs. I kind of quit the custom thing, and I do requests for people, but it's surely a request. I don't do a customized whatever, but this is a very close friend of mine. And so for whatever reason, her thing is just, I keep thinking of how beautiful she is, and she's got this gorgeous dress, and how much she loves climbing as much as I do, and how much she loves the outdoors as much as I do, and her love of, desert and sand rock as much as granite, and how am I going to make all of that work and make it elegant, and make it a joyful challenge, and also part for her. Yeah. So it's weighing heavily on my creative mind right now. It's kind of, I keep thinking about all of the different things that I could do. So
Nar-
sometimes it
narrowing
is
it
for
down.
people. Like I love thinking about people's stories and experiences as well. Like that's another thing that will inspire me to create something. You know, somebody comes in the booth and tells me some story. Sometimes just that triggers
Some
something.
thought or
Yeah,
connection to a
yeah,
piece. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, so I know, like the first piece that I saw when I walked into your booth, there was it really was a landscape. It was a house on a hill. And I have to ask, is that house representative of something, or was it just from the imagination? Is it a home that you can relate
It's a
to?
home and not a house, right? I think it's the one with the big open sky. It has like I like doing the houses with these big open skies and sometimes with a little tree that kind of comes over and nestles around the house, you know, a little kind of protective shade um from the elements. But I for me right now, a lot of times when I do houses that are in the hills or it is my home. And sometimes like I have one, the big one that's in our poster is from seeing homes when we do our travels. And there's just one home on this flat prairie, like out in the middle of nowhere. And my imagination goes wild about what that's like to live the life of this, farm, very remote, away from the world with just this big sky around you. And again, it's like imagining what other people's lives might be like in their homes as well.
Well, I believe you tell good stories through your art, because I can feel those stories looking at the art. I can tell there's always something behind it. That's why I was so eager
Thank
to talk
you.
to you, because I really felt like, there is something behind just the little design,
Thank
and
you.
jewelry's so personal. So it is a way to have someone have something that they can truly relate to. Um,
I
and I love
agree.
that about your work. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I agree. I'm very much I like the idea of that piece also that somebody's wearing and somebody stopping and that conversation starting between two people. So you could be on other ends of the world with your belief systems, but a story could bring two people together. So yeah,
Very
I
much so. Very much. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I know that you're busy, and I know that you've got great stuff to keep creating. We will be sharing the links to your social media and to your website, and also to the studios, because I found a couple of on your website. There was some stores, the galleries that have your work
yeah,
in them. So we will share that along in the video, but also in our show notes, so people can find
thank you.
you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much, Shell.
It's been a pleasure.
You bet.
Thanks so much.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
To dream, collect